In 1492, Christopher Columbus would become the first European to make the long and dangerous journey across the Atlantic Ocean and set foot in the Americas. Over the past several decades, it's become more widely accepted that he was in fact not the first European to do so, nor was Welsh Prince Madog ab Owain Gwynedd, who some have claimed in the past allegedly beat Columbus there, when he reached modern-day Mobile, Alabama in 1170 AD. But we're not going to talk about that. While there are not many concrete written records of Vikings being the first Europeans to reach the Americas, there's insurmountable evidence that they did roughly 1,000 years ago. We have tales passed down for generations, remains of an entire Viking settlement in Newfoundland, Canada, and even a mysterious penny that has led many to question if Vikings often conducted trade with Native Americans south of the modern-day Canadian border. On August 18, 1957, Guy Melgren, a local Maine resident and archaeologist, found a mysterious coin at a Native American settlement at Naskeek Point, Penobscot Bay in Brooklyn, Maine. Unfortunately for Melgren, his finding didn't attract much attention until 1978, after his death. Initially thought to have been a British penny from 12th century AD, it was later identified as a minted silver coin of Olaf Skira, the King of Norway who reigned from 1067 to 1093 AD. This coin today is known as the Maine penny or the Goddard coin. What makes the finding of the Maine penny so curious is that the one and only historically established Viking settlement in North America, called the Lars o Meadows Historical Site, is not that far of a distance away from the Goddard site. If you were to travel by car to the Goddard site from this ancient Viking settlement, it would be a roughly 26-hour drive. If the Norse could travel an ocean to somewhere roughly 6,000 kilometers away, then an 1,800-kilometer journey south on land or by sailing along a coastline doesn't sound too far-fetched. Before we delve deeper into our thoughts on whether or not the Maine penny was just an elaborate hoax, or actually the result of trade between Viking settlers and native tribes, we must first examine the known evidence of Norse presence in North America with a brief history lesson. Before being the first Europeans to discover North America, the Vikings would also be the first to discover the world's largest island, Greenland. Erik the Red, who was born in 950 AD, is widely popularized as being the first person in the world to discover Greenland, though this is heavily disputed. There are claims of an Icelandic settler named Gunnbjorn Ulfsson sighting the landmass nearly a century before Erik. Regardless, it is agreed that, at the very least, Erik was one of the first to extensively explore this landmass on foot after he was exiled from Iceland. Once his exile time was up, he returned to Iceland, bringing back many tales from this newly discovered land. Wanting to make a strong case for starting a settlement on this landmass, Erik called it Greenland, even though its landscape is predominantly ice sheets and flat treeless tundras with extremely low temperatures. His tales were enough, though, for the poor Icelandic citizens, who had just experienced a brutal famine, to want to colonize the island. Setting sail with 25 ships of Icelandic settlers, Erik arrived to Greenland with only 14 of the ships, losing the other 11 of them to the frigid depths of the Denmark Strait. 2 colonies were set up in the southern tip of Greenland in the only 2 areas with farmable land. They were known as the Eastern Settlement and the Western Settlement. The Eastern Settlement was by far the largest, reaching nearly 4,000 inhabitants at its peak. This would also be where one of Erik's sons, Leif Erikson, would spend his childhood. It would be the young and courageous Leif that would be the first European to set foot on North American soil. Unfortunately, there is little known about Leif Erikson's early life. Most of what historians know about Leif's legacy comes from various Norse sagas of that time. According to the saga of Erik the Red, Leif had spent time at the court of the Norwegian king, Olaf Tryggvason, around 1000 AD. It was here that Leif would convert to Christianity and become encouraged by the Scandinavian king to spread the religion to the settlements in Greenland, with a priest that would be accompanying him. Setting sail back to Greenland with his crew and the priest, it is said that Leif was blown way off course by a storm, causing him to arrive at unfamiliar shores. Here, him and his crew would disembark and discover that these lands were enriched with tall trees and many vines, prompting him to call the land Vinland. After a little exploring the newly found land, which happened to be modern-day Newfoundland, Leif would return to Greenland to complete his original mission of spreading Christianity there, as well as share his findings of the new lands of West Greenland. Like his father being disputed as being the first to discover Greenland, there are claims that Leif was not the first to discover Vinland. These claims state that instead it was Bjarni Herjolfsson. According to another Norse saga, the Saga of the Greenlanders, Bjarni was blown off course and sighted land after 3 days. He would eventually return back to Greenland and report this new mysterious land. 15 years later, Leif would muster together a crew to explore these uncharted lands, and was the first to do so on foot. While historians don't know which saga was the most factual, we know that Leif Erikson played an important role in the initial exploration of North America, regardless of which story is right on who discovered it first. Unfortunately for Leif, he would never return to Vinland again. Other Norsemen would though, exploring it and eventually establishing a colony there today, known as Meadows in the northern tip of Newfoundland. It was in 1960 that Meadows was first discovered. Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad and his archaeologist wife, Anne Ingstad, ventured to North America to find the location described in the Norse sagas. Traveling by boat down the northeastern Canadian coast, the couple found a shoreline that perfectly matched the descriptions of those mentioned in the sagas. Arriving at a nearby town, the husband-wife duo asked locals if they knew of any potential Viking remains. One resident showed Helga and Anne the grassy mounds on the nearby beach, which all of the other locals believed to be abandoned homes from natives. Helga and Anne would excavate from 1961 to 1968, discovering 8 buildings constructed with sod and held together with wood frames, enough to house 30 to 160 settlers. While there were many stone tools that could suggest the site was Native American, the many bronze artifacts, iron nails, and Icelandic-style shelters that were found indicate that it was clearly and indisputably a Norse settlement. Today, Meadows is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is mainly a reconstruction of what is theorized used to exist, using carbon dating. Other archaeologists have been able to determine Meadows having been inhabited by the Norse between 990 and 1050 BC. In 2021, further tests were done utilizing dendrochronology, also known as tree ring dating. This method can track a tree's ring to the exact year a tree was formed and provide data for scientists in regards to climate and atmospheric conditions at any given time in history. The results for using tree ring dating at Meadows indicated Norse activity in 1021 AD, precisely 1,000 years before the test was conducted. So if it's proven that the Norse settlement was inhabited till only about 1050 AD, then how did the Maine penny end up in North America when it bears the face of Olaf Shearer, who reigned from 1067 to 1093? Well, a study conducted by the PNAS in 2019 suggests that the site has still shown activity for over 100 years. So even though Norse settlers weren't living here any longer, it is still likely that they were using this site as an occasional rest stop for trading lumber and other goods with nearby natives. That being said, it is probable the Maine penny was traded with the natives of the surrounding area, where it gradually made its way down to modern-day Maine. While it would be fun to think that the Vikings explored further down south from Meadows and dropped or traded the coin at the Goddard site itself, it is very unlikely. The site is dated to 1180 to 1235 AD, meaning that the penny was likely traded between tribes over a span of several decades, after being initially traded with the Norse settlers at Meadows. Aside from the trade with more welcoming tribes, we sadly know very little about the relationship between the Norse and the natives, which they refer to as Skraelings. The Norse sagas mention these Skraelings several times, attacking Norse explorers such as Thorfinn Karlsefni. Karlsefni claimed the lands were impossible to inhabit in the long run due to not only the brutally cold winters, but also the constant threat of being attacked by natives at any given time. While the Norse seem to have iffy relations with Native American tribes, the abundance of evidence that has come out over the years proves that they were indeed partaking in trade with one another. Artifacts such as the Maine penny bring forward new and exciting possibilities such as how Vikings potentially traded with natives as south as Maine. As far as we know, they didn't explore too much of North America, but maybe one day we'll find another piece of evidence that proves us otherwise.